The king of nightmares. The calming madness possessed his silent castle. The ground was filled with cracks, dry, no human in sight for millions of miles. The eternal waking dream followed through with hopeless dread. The lonely man stuck inside his own nightmare only had illusions for his companions. His illusions were many different versions of his one lost love, forever in despair, forgotten by the material plane of existence. He was no longer allowed to visit anyone else's life or universe. He had in fact punished himself. He deemed himself unworthy of kindness and succumbed to his own torturous cruelty. There was no sadistic pleasure, only empty misery. Neutrality at its finest, the helpless cruelty of only observing, not participating. He saw everyone, but no one saw him. He was a living mirror, a shadowy image of a dim reflection, dwelling in his own curse. He did not enjoy being the king of nightmares. He wanted to take a vacation away from the void, but he was born into his throne. He does not recall how he came to power, perhaps from a lost kingdom deep inside a dream hiding inside a dream. He whispered silently through his huge monster of a castle, filled with elaborate labyrinths and secret passageways that he did not yet discover. He was too lazy to be scared of anything in his own realm. He forgot who he was almost all the time, but he had strange creatures in his service that reminded him of his occupation, his duty, his life. The fact was that he was occupied with drifting, wandering, in case you are wondering. I, the one who now writes this for you to see, accidentally fell inside the throne room of his castle. I don't remember how I got here. Nothing seemed solid. Everything was constantly changing. The first time I saw countless numbers of books scattered around his throne. When I first saw him, he was evidently asleep with two books in his hands. One was How Did I Get Here?, an unpublished manuscript by Isidore Ducassi, and the other book was titled How to Wake Up Forever, a forgotten massive tome written by Salvador Dali's ego. I looked at him with caution. He was breathing like an enormous elephant. I think they call it snoring. I described his throne inside my mind. It seemed to be entirely made up of captured clouds and trapped sound. His clothes were woven with sand. His hair flowed in all directions with colors of gray, silver, and purple. His eyes looked as if they were glued shut. His skin was paper thin. You could see the beginning of God underneath his soft sin. He was in a state of posture that looked as if he had been here for far too long. Forever, perhaps. And here I was staring at him. I remember nothing except falling. Who I am, I do not know. I had caught the disease of amnesia. It was a horrible fate. Behind his throne was a desk made out of branches and twigs. On the desk was a mountain of blank computer paper. Laying beside the paper was a grail filled with diamond-plated pencils sticking out of it. I began to write down what you are now reading. It is almost as if I'm not writing this, but being dictated notes or channeling the thoughts of my dead memory. I was writing in past and present tense back and forth. As I continued to write these pages, the fear sitting on the throne started to yawn and stretched out his long, shadowy arms. It would not be long before he would notice my presence. After yawning and stretching, I could hear him slowly building up a mourning melody. It sounded like birds caged within a snake. It was fascinating, yet terrifying beauty that he exhaled. I think he was expressing the essence of his existence. The essence of his existence. Finally, he stood up and the throne disappeared. He turned around and looked at me for the first time. His eyes were the sharpest and deadliest of knives. He looked as if though he had killed me an infinite amount of times. In my mind, blasphemous thoughts arised. I believed to be stuck inside this nightmarish reality with my own murderer. The prey and the predator destined to serve in an eternal sentence together. All that changed when he spoke. Do not be afraid of me at this moment. I remained silent. He opened his fang-toothed mouth a second time and asked, Would you like something to remember? He seemed to know that I had forgotten everything. He then began to talk comfortably. I relaxed. We were both still standing about 10 feet away from each other. You see, he said, I remember everyone's life except my own. This is my curse. For as long as I can remember, I cannot remember myself. It is the sweetest tragedy for the so-called king of nightmares. Welcome to my humble home. You can call me a Ragathim, if you wish. I go by many names, but that is what I prefer you, especially you, to address me by. Since you cannot remember your name, I will tell you a secret and share with you your real name. But first, what will you do for me for this gift of memory? I spoke to him for the first time and answered, I do not know who I am, and I do not know who you are. I don't know why I'm here. I only know your name. Everything else is a silent blur. He responded, I do not know who I really am. My servants are certain that I am the king of nightmares. How this came to be, I do not know. But on the other hand, I do know who you are. Now, I will ask you again, what will you do for me if I give you back your real name? Suddenly I awoke, and here I am, the king of nightmares.